Everyone thought he was just some quiet kid sipping tea. Nobody had the faintest clue that in a heartbeat he'd turn into something lethal. It was a sticky afternoon in an old neighborhood on the outskirts of Los Angeles, where the local Chinese-American community still held onto its roots. Between the narrow stone alleys and wooden courtyard tables, a calm-faced young man sat down for lunch. His name was Kai. Simple training clothes, messy hair falling into his eyes, a small cup of green tea steady in his hand. In front of him, a steaming plate of stir-fried veggies with rice sat waiting. The place felt hushed, almost sacred, until he showed up. Breaking the stillness came a tank of a man, muscles stacked, tattoos crawling across his arms. People only knew him as Han. Every step he took thudded like a warning. His body looked like it had been carved in some grimy gym, every line screaming aggression. Without a word, he closed in on Kai, staring him down with that look of cheap contempt. Behind him, a dozen guys lingered in the shadows, already grinning like they knew what was coming. Han grabbed Kai's plate, not his own, Kai's, and with a nasty little smirk, flipped the whole thing over the kid's head. Hot sauce dripped down Kai's black hair, vegetables stuck to his forehead. He didn't move, didn't say a word, just kept holding his cup like the world had slowed to half speed. The crowd tensed, some waited for him to blow up. Others snickered, betting he'd bolt just like every other guy humiliated by Han. But the air shifted. Kai set the cup down, slowly. His eyes came up. For the first time he locked onto Han's. There was no anger there, no fear, just the calm of someone who'd seen worse. Han stepped back without even realizing it. And then, before he could blink, it happened. Kai's body snapped into motion. A blur. He spun, snapped his leg up and slammed a side kick that drove the wooden table straight into Han's chest. The big man staggered, off balance. Kai flowed forward, 3 lightning-fast strikes, shoulder, knee, waist, and the giant's frame collapsed like someone cut his strings. Han hit the floor. His crew shot up in shock, but Kai didn't even look their way. Smooth as ever, he grabbed a napkin, wiped his face clean, sat back down, and quietly asked the waiter for another bowl of rice. Nobody had a clue what they'd just witnessed. Phones came out. Cameras rolled, whispers flew, but there was something different about him, something hidden, something ancient. And then, from the roofline, an old man watched with a crooked smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, almost like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Kai wasn't just some delivery kid, not just another quiet young man. He was someone who had sworn never to fight again. And now, by breaking that vow, he'd stirred enemies the world had long forgotten. The neighborhood where it all went down was known as Lin's Row, a forgotten backstreet wedged between LA's downtown skyscrapers. Outside, the modern city roared, but inside that block, time felt frozen. It was a refuge of old traditions and unwritten codes, where respect was silent and authority didn't come from the cops. It came from honor. Kai had lived there since he was 9, after his family fled China under circumstances nobody really knew. The only one who held the truth was Master Zhang, the old man watching from the rooftop that day. Zhang wasn't just some bystander. He was Kai's mentor, the only man who knew about the secret training the boy had endured for years, hidden from the world. By day, Kai delivered food through the alleys to help his sick mother. By night, Zhang trained him in silence. But there was a reason for all that secrecy. Kai's past carried more danger than he liked to admit. He wasn't just skilled, he was the last disciple of a fighting style long thought extinct, outlawed after a bloody underground tournament in China years ago. No one could know that, especially not now. Meanwhile, Han Becker, the guy who'd been humiliated in front of everyone, sat at home, his torn shirt on the floor, his knuckles raw with rage. Son of a former US soldier and a wealthy businesswoman, Han had grown up never hearing the word no. His presence in Lin's Row was pure arrogance. He treated it like his own playground, streaming street fights to rack up TikTok followers by humiliating strangers live. But with Kai, everything slipped out of his control. That night, Han rewatched the clip over and over, the one that had already blown past 800,000 views. Comments piled up. Dude didn't even break a sweat and folded that meathead. Is this kid a monk undercover or what? We need part 2. Bet he's like the John Wick of Kung Fu. The humiliation wasn't just local anymore. It had gone global. Han wasn't about to let that slide. He started digging. He hunted for names, searched files, tried facial recognition. But Kai barely existed. No school records, no socials, no American passport. It was like someone had erased him. And then, something stranger. One of the diner's security cameras caught a warped frame of an old man on the roof. For some reason, the footage always froze right when the old man smiled. The next day, Zhang called Kai up to the rooftops, the same way he had when Kai was just a boy. You know what you did, don't you? Zhang's gravelly voice cut through the wind. Kai nodded. He pushed too far. I just reacted. No, Zhang said. You opened the door. And now, whoever's on the other side, they've already caught your scent. Zhang pulled out an old envelope sealed with red wax, a summons, a warning. Something Kai hadn't seen since he was 13. They know you're here, and they're coming. Not this time, Kai answered. I'm done running. But what Kai didn't realize was that among the millions watching that viral clip, one man in a Nevada desert base kept replaying it. His eyes weren't curious, they were filled with recognition and vengeance. That fight in the courtyard was just the beginning. The real enemy hadn't even shown his face yet. 2 days later, the video had already cracked 2 million views. While the internet built theories about the mysterious Peace Master, life inside Lin's Row turned chaotic. Strangers poured in. Influencers tried to recreate the fight. Reporters swarmed the alleys, sticking mics into locals' faces. Tourists snapped photos like the neighborhood was some theme park. For the community, it was an invasion. For Kai, it was a reminder. He had broken the promise he made to his master. No fighting, no spotlight, no reopening old doors. But now the gate was wide open. That morning, Master Zhang vanished. In his place, Kai found a note pinned to the calligraphy school door. Remember where you came from before the past swallows you whole. No signature. The rumors grew fast. A black car without plates circled the entrance twice. Security cameras were ripped from 2 street poles. May, another delivery worker and one of Kai's few friends, never came back from a Chinatown drop-off. Police brushed it off as a possible runaway. But Kai knew better. It was a message. He started retraining in secret. Late at night, on the rooftop of the small building where he lived with his mother, he moved through the stances and strikes. But this time, his muscles ached more. His focus wavered. Fear crept in, not for himself, but for everyone around him. Han Becker, meanwhile, plotted his counterstrike. He found Zhang's school, broke in under cover of night, and streamed the whole thing live. He smashed windows, tore calligraphy scrolls, and called Kai out by name in front of thousands watching. Yo, Ninja Master, where you at? Gonna take me down with a toothpick this time? The harassment spilled offline. 2 village teens were jumped by Han's followers, who filmed themselves shoving the boys and mocking, "You Kung Fu students too, huh?" before pushing them to the ground. Fear spread like smoke. Nobody spoke. Nobody fought back. Until Kai was summoned before the village council. Elder Huo, 82 and respected by all, looked at him with heavy eyes. "You don't get it, boy. They have no honor, no codes. You challenged them. And now we all pay the price." "I only defended myself," Kai said. "Yes, but in public. And the world was watching." Kai left with the weight of it all on his shoulders. His fight for justice had brought chaos. The breaking point came that night. He returned home to find the door cracked open. His mother was on the floor, unconscious, a strange circular mark burned into the wall, a symbol Kai knew too well. The seal of the Jade Wolf Brotherhood, the same group once responsible for silent massacres of rival clans in China. The last time Kai had seen that mark was the night his temple burned. They were back, and they'd found him. He rushed his mother to the hospital. She lived, but slipped into a coma. No witnesses, no footage, just that burned emblem, a scar from his old life. Rage burned under Kai's skin, but he knew fury was their trap. React with anger, and he'd be playing right into their hands. Instead, he sought help where no one would expect. That same night, he tracked down Liang, a blind outcast, a former member of the Brotherhood now living in exile in San Gabriel. "I knew you'd come," Liang rasped before Kai even spoke. "They hurt my mother. They want more than that. They want you to lash out, to act like they predict. Only then can they erase everything you stand for." Kai lowered his head. "And what do I stand for?" Liang's reply was blunt. The last living memory of a temple they tried to erase from history. Kai rose in silence. In that moment, he understood. This fight was no longer his alone. It belonged to everyone who had been silenced before, and he would be the voice they never expected to hear again. With his mother in a coma and the Jade Wolf symbol burned into the wall of his home, Kai was no longer just the kid who stood up to a bully. He was a target, not just of one man, but of something bigger, older, far deadlier than anything he could face alone. But Kai had never truly been alone. May, the missing delivery girl, reappeared out of nowhere 3 days later. She was bruised, dehydrated, with raw marks on her wrists. When she finally woke up in the hospital, she whispered only 3 words: "They tested me." Before she could say more, she spiraled into panic and had to be sedated. The revelation shook Kai. He knew exactly what it meant. The Brotherhood was reviving an old ritual of recruitment, kidnapping young fighters, breaking their minds, forcing them into brutal matches against each other. Survivors were indoctrinated, stripped of memory, turned into soldiers with no past, no names. It was the very same method that had annihilated Kai's temple years ago, but now they were doing it on American soil, and May was only the beginning. Meanwhile, Master Zhang was still missing. Yet in his old training hall, Kai uncovered more than silence. Beneath a hidden panel in the floor lay a red wooden box, weathered with age. Inside, documents, maps, and dusty VHS tapes, forbidden recordings of inter-temple fights, showcasing techniques that were never meant to be filmed. One tape froze Kai's blood. On the grainy screen appeared Han Becker, not as the man who humiliated him, but as a child. Standing beside a figure Kai recognized all too well, a man from the Brotherhood, Han's father. Now it all made sense. The rage, the pride, the obsession with shaming Kai in public. It wasn't about ego, it was legacy. Han wasn't just a street thug chasing clout. He was the son of the Jade Wolf Brotherhood, and he was being played as bait to reignite the conflict. The viral video had never been an accident. It was the spark. They wanted the world to see. They wanted to provoke. They wanted the hidden heirs of dead temples to rise up so they could be hunted down. Pressure built with every passing day. Liang, the blind exile, revealed that the Brotherhood had reorganized into 3 cells: the Wolf's Fang, enforcers, the ones who carried out physical strikes and street assaults; the Tongue of Fire, masters of media manipulation, deepfakes, and psychological warfare; the Dead Eye, the Watchers, the strategists, the ones who wait. They never strike head-on, Liang said. First, they spread chaos. Then they take your ground. And finally, they give you a choice that forces you to destroy yourself. Kai knew he couldn't just stand on defense anymore. Together with Liang, he began training May in secret. She carried trauma inside her, but also resilience. More youths began showing up. Some came out of fear, some out of curiosity, but all of them were tied, unknowingly, to that invisible thread of the past. Lin's Row, once silent, had become something else, a seed of resistance. But time was running out. An anonymous message was left at the main gate of Lin's Row. "You have until the next full moon. Deliver Kai, or we harvest everyone." A threat with a ticking clock. The full moon was 7 days away. And Kai knew if he didn't act first, the Brotherhood would erase everything. His life, his history, his people. The village drowned in silence. Not peace, but the kind that comes before a storm. Families packed up. Some fled out of fear. Others because they knew the countdown was no bluff. 3 days remained until the full moon. Kai trained without pause. Liang organized patrols. And Mei, despite her scars, showed startling precision with the Mist Temple's lost style, a martial branch built on evasion and surgical strikes. Still, fear clung to every wall. Then, everything changed. At 2 a.m., an explosion ripped through the heart of Lin's Row. The meditation temple, one of the last sacred spaces still standing, was engulfed in flames. The fire roared high, painting the sky with cruel orange light. And at its center, bound in the lotus position, a body burned. It was Master Zhang. Kai lunged toward the blaze, but Liang held him back with iron strength. There was nothing left to save. A crowd gathered, frozen in grief. Some collapsed to their knees. Others wept. Kai stood still. At the temple's gate, drawn in ash, a new symbol waited. Final warning. Rage clawed at him, threatening to tear through his calm. But before fury could take over, Liang handed him something, a VHS tape, scorched and warped at the edges. "He gave me this," Liang said. "Told me to pass it on, if he never returned." Kai watched it before dawn, a flickering, dimly lit recording. A boy training in snow, his back to the camera, movements sharp, precise. The frame shifted. Master Zhang appeared, younger, guiding him. "You were a child," Liang murmured. "Barely a year of training, already better than grown men." The tape cut again, a ceremony. Kai, 13 years old, kneeling before temple elders. Receiving a title Zhang had never spoken of, Shadow Guardian of the White Temple. Kai's chest tightened. He wasn't just a disciple. He had been chosen, entrusted with the temple's most forbidden legacy. The manual of the final technique, the 3 death strike. That was why the Brotherhood wanted him, not just revenge, not just humiliation, but because only Kai could unlock the White Temple's final weapon, a move that could erase any other style of combat. The tape ended with Zhang staring straight into the lens. "If you're seeing this, I've failed. But you, Kai, you still have a choice. You can use this power to hide, or to rewrite everything." The screen froze, then faded black. Kai didn't cry, didn't scream. He simply stood. He went to the temple's ruins, dug beneath the shattered altar, and there, sealed in metal, lay the relic. A black journal with gold edges, its rice paper pages carrying the White Temple's sacred technique. Lifting it, he felt the weight of history, of culture, of spirit. There was no longer room for hesitation, no room for silence. That night, he called the survivors together. "They killed our master, threatened our families, burned our history." He raised the journal. "But they forgot something. Our strength isn't written here. It's written here." He pressed his fist to his chest. Mei stepped forward. Then another. Then another. All of them. Ready. The broken bells of the burned temple tolled in the night wind. A war was coming, but Kai had no plans to wait for the full moon. He would go to them, and he would bring the past with him. Smoke from the burned temple still hung in the air when Kai's decision began to send ripples no one could ignore. By the next morning, Lin's Row looked unrecognizable. Shattered shop windows, boarded doors, hastily hung "for sale" signs. Fear had already taken a chunk of the neighborhood. But not everyone left. Those who stayed gathered in what remained of Zhang's dojo. Kai had turned the place into a resistance hub. Nobody called him the delivery boy or the quiet kid from the restaurant anymore. He was just Kai, and that was enough. The enemy's response was fast. A video hit social feeds the following day. Han Becker stood in the middle of a makeshift ring, lights and cameras trained on him, a crowd pressing in. Hung behind him like a trophy was May's uniform. "This is our new challenge," Han said straight into the camera. "Kai, the Kung Fu warrior, you want to protect the weak, then face me, one-on-one. Live, tomorrow, midnight, or she doesn't come back whole." May was gone again. This time the threat wasn't a bluff. Kai watched the clip without blinking. His anger wasn't a flare now. It was ice, cold, precise, and far more dangerous. Liang didn't sugarcoat it. "This is a trap. You know that." "I know," Kai said, "but he made it personal. So it's personal for me too. What if it's not just him? What if the Brotherhood is waiting? Then let them wait." Before leaving, Kai handed the forbidden manual to Liang. He told the old man to hide it somewhere even Liang couldn't find easily, so that if something happened, the secret would die with him. The fight was set in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Glendale. When Kai arrived, floodlights cut through the night. Drones hummed overhead. Cameras covered every angle. An anonymous channel streamed the event live to nearly 1 million viewers. In the center, Han stood in black with emerald trim, the jade wolf emblem stitched to his chest. This wasn't just a street fight anymore, it was an announced war. May sat cuffed to a chair, her arm sliced, face swollen, but alive. "You actually came," Han sneered. "Now the world's gonna see who you really are. We'll watch you fall." Kai didn't answer. The match began, and for the first time, Kai hesitated. Not from fear. Something else was off. Han wasn't sloppy or cocky. His moves were trained, surgical. He fought like a killer taught to finish things quietly. Kai realized Han had been put through an intensive program. This wasn't merely a physical setup. It was a technical and emotional trap designed to strip Kai bare. They wanted him to burn it all, to expose every secret. They almost succeeded, but Kai had something they hadn't counted on: memory. Every strike Han threw carried a piece of a style Kai recognized. A Mongol base break here, an iron claw spin there, the ragged breath of a blind tiger technique, all stitched together. Kai had fought them all once. He knew them, and he turned it. With a blend of passive defense and surgical counters, he neutralized Han in under 30 seconds. The ring fell silent. Han lay still. Kai breathed slow, steady, eyes locked. He didn't kill, he didn't break the man, but he won. That victory triggered the real consequence. A drone drifted down near one of the containers and dropped a note. Kai snatched it up. "You passed our test. Now we want you. Surrender, or we wipe the village." It was never just about Han. It never had been. The true enemy had finally revealed itself, the Central Council of the Jade Wolf Brotherhood. Kai understood then. The public fight was over. The real war was just starting. He returned to the village before dawn, exhausted, every muscle still buzzing. Liang and the young sentries who'd kept watch clustered around him. No cheers, no celebrations. The drone's note hung over them like a verdict: surrender or be wiped out. Lines had been drawn. For the first time, Kai wasn't sure he was ready. He spent the day silent on the ruined steps of Zhang's school, watching neighbors leave one by one. Each departure felt like a sentence, a concession of what he'd failed to protect. That night, Liang came to him carrying a mirror. "Look," he said. Kai stared at his reflection. Not the boy he once was, but a man marked by sleepless nights, scars, and eyes that had aged beyond his years. Still, something remained. Focus, hunger, not for revenge so much as for something deeper and steadier. They want you alone, Liang said. But this is exactly the time you cannot be alone. The next morning, Kai did something no one expected. He summoned everyone who remained, youngsters, elders, shopkeepers, street cooks, the artists, all of them. He spoke plainly. They want me, but it's not about me. It's about everything we are, everything they erased. They want our memory. They want our silence. He paused, then added, If I go as your representative, not to be destroyed, but to strike back. No one left. No one walked out. In that moment, Kai stopped reacting and began to lead. Training started in shifts. Liang drilled the younger ones. Mei, healed and fierce, taught evasion and counterattacks. Merchants learned basic defenses, chairs as shields, wooden poles as improvised weapons. The village found its heartbeat again, but Kai knew muscle alone wouldn't win. He needed unpredictability. He returned to the sacred manual, not to master the final strike. He'd learned that using it came with a cost he wasn't ready to pay. But to decode a note, Zhang left. Directions to find one last living piece of the temple's lineage. A person. A woman. Her name was Lin Yue. Legend said she'd died in the old wars, but Zhang's notes said otherwise. She had fled to Seattle and lived as a street artist under another name. Kai went alone on a 2-day run. Almost no one knew he'd left. In Seattle, he found her performing silently at a subway station, drawing ephemeral landscapes in colored sand that the wind erased minutes later. It was her meditation, her exile. "Why are you here?" she asked without looking up. "Because it's not over. I need what you know." She refused at first, warning that what he sought could kill him. Then he said something that stopped her cold. "I don't want to win for myself. I want to win for those who can't fight anymore." She looked and saw not a pupil, but a leader. Over 3 days she trained him, not to grow stronger, but to grow centered, to master the limit within. "A warrior without control is a pawn," she told him, "a tragic comic. If you want to be the hero of your story, learn when to stop before you cross the line they bait you into crossing." When Kai returned, he was lighter, more present, and more dangerous. The village had changed. It breathed unity now. Those who stayed were ready, not to die for Kai, but to stand with him. And Kai knew if the enemy wanted war, they'd find something they never expected. The full moon rose over Lin's Row like a silver blade hanging in the sky. Just hours remained before the Brotherhood's deadline, but there was no panic, no chaos, only silence, a sharp, disciplined silence. In the past few days, Kai had led preparations like an ancient general, though his eyes carried the weight of someone who knew fear firsthand. He couldn't promise victory, but he could promise one thing: no one would die on their knees. The meditation temple, once reduced to ash, had been rebuilt in part, a symbolic act of defiance. It now served as their command center. From there, Liang and Mei mapped entry points and escape routes, while Kai received updates from a web of lookouts posted across the city. Mei was no longer the trembling girl haunted by captivity. She had become a pillar of resistance. In training, she was fast, calculating, but her real gift was behavioral reading. She could sense an enemy's move before they made it. Trauma had given her that edge. Now, it was her weapon. Liang stayed as he always had, half master, half shadow. He never challenged Kai, but always tested him. And it was Liang who delivered the final missing piece, the traitor. "In every great fall," Liang said, "there's always a traitor. Someone planted inside. The Brotherhood never attacks without planting a seed. Find it before it blooms with your blood." Distrusting his own was a burden Kai didn't want. But he knew Liang was right. Someone in the village was feeding them intel. The temple strike, Mei's capture, the sabotaged cameras, none of it had been random. And then came confirmation. On the eve of the full moon, a trap Mei had rigged was disarmed minutes before it triggered. Only a tiny circle of allies had known about it. Kai gathered the suspects, 4 villagers. One was Jin, his mother's cousin who had raised him like a brother, another, a young artisan, and then Wei, the quiet, one-eyed librarian, the least likely of all. Kai asked each the same question. What did you lose when Zhang died? The answers came with grief. Jin spoke of brotherhood, the artisan of her father who had trained under Zhang, but Wei only smiled. I didn't lose anything. I simply went back to where I've always belonged. The cold, calculated tone sealed it. Kai pinned him down before he could draw the hidden blade from his sleeve. Wei was the traitor, and he wasn't alone. From him, Kai uncovered a hidden network of Brotherhood informants, marked with thermal ink tattoos, only visible under heat. That explained how the enemy had known so much. But now, that link was broken, and the clock was ticking. 6 hours left until the deadline. Kai split the defenders into 3 units. The Blade, led by Kai himself, responsible for direct assault. The Shield, led by Mei, tasked with evacuation and civilian defense. The Mist, led by Liang, built for diversions and ambush. Everyone knew their role. Everyone knew the stakes. As the sun bled into the horizon, Kai climbed the ruined school's rooftop and looked down at the village. He remembered when he was just a delivery kid, blending into the alleys. Now he was the face of a rebellion no one thought possible. There was no turning back, and then they came. Not just Han, not just the Brotherhood, dozens, in formation, silent, marching to erase Lin's Row once and for all. But this time, they would be received. The full moon hung over Lin's Row like a judging eye. No shouting, no speeches. The Brotherhood arrived like a silent army. Black uniforms, masked faces, every step falling like a sentence. They surrounded the village, every alley, every exit sealed. Time itself seemed to freeze. At the center courtyard, Kai waited. He wore a simple white uniform with grey wraps at his wrists. No crest, no emblem, just presence. Around him stood the villagers, each in position, each group steady. Mei at the north flank, Liang at the east, Kai at the heart. From the Brotherhood's front line stepped not Han, but someone far worse. General Quan, the butcher who had led the massacre of Kai's old temple. The general's face was unforgettable. A jagged scar along his jaw, eyes colder than stone, voice sharp as a blade. "Surrender, Kai," he said. "No need to turn this into a tragedy." "Too late for that," Kai answered. "You still carry the manual?" Kai didn't respond. But everyone knew the truth. Quan smiled. "Then it's simple. Hand it over, or Lin's Row disappears tonight." Kai stepped slowly to the center of the courtyard. With each step, the tension thickened. He looked at every face around him. Old friends, new allies, ordinary people who had chosen to stand. From inside his robes, he produced a small metal cylinder. "It's in here." The general extended his hands, taking it. "Wise, you know what that technique can do. It belongs to no one." He turned to leave, but before his second step, the metal began to heat. "No," he whispered. The cylinder exploded in a surge of electricity, frying radios, drones, and energy weapons in an instant. That was the signal. Kai launched forward, springing through the air, stripping a guard's staff and turning it against the next wave. The battle erupted. Lin's Row became a war zone. But this time, Kai wasn't alone. Mei's unit struck from the alleys with lightning ambushes, vanishing before counterattacks. Liang's mist group drowned the enemy in smoke bombs, turning order into chaos. But the Brotherhood was massive, better armed, relentless. Kai fought as though time bent around him, each move drawn from memory, loss, and every lesson Zhang and Lin Yue had left behind. Then, at the height of the battle, a shadow dropped from the rooftops. Han Becker. "Kai!" he shouted. "This still isn't enough for you?" Kai froze. Han was clad in full Brotherhood armor, but his eyes were empty. He landed hard, launching a barrage of violent surgical strikes. His speed was monstrous, his power unnatural. "What did they do to you?" Kai asked, dodging. "They completed me." Kai realized the truth. Han had undergone the Brotherhood's final ritual. His will stripped, his body weaponized, a puppet with memory. But Kai refused to kill him. Instead, he used Lin Yue's forgotten technique, the Inner Seal, a series of movements designed to redirect an opponent's energy and shatter their mental chains. Their duel was like mirrors colliding, but Kai landed the 3 decisive touches, breaking the seal. Han collapsed to his knees, tears streaming, his identity returning in broken fragments. Meanwhile, Liang led the villagers in, pushing back the Brotherhood's remnants. And then Mei struck the decisive blow, disabling their primary power generator, the source of their sonic weapons. The invaders faltered, their line fractured. Kai, bloodied and exhausted, climbed onto the central altar and shouted, "Lin's row stands! Those who remain will fight against time itself. Those who flee, she will be forgotten." General Quan, now surrounded, watched in silence. Kai faced him. "The manual never existed, did it?" Quan asked. Kai's gaze cut through him. "The true power of the temple was never a strike. It was a legacy, and that you'll never erase." Quan lunged. Liang blocked. For the first time, master and student fought side by side, sealing the past in blood and fire. When the smoke cleared, Lin's row still stood, scarred, burned but alive, and at the heart of it, Kai was no longer just a fighter, he was proof of the impossible. Days had passed since the battle. Lin's row was in ruins but not silent. The sounds of rebuilding echoed through the alleys. Hammering, voices, children running, the smell of incense once again drifted in the air. Kai walked the streets with his shoulder wrapped, greeting people one by one. Every gaze followed him. Not with worship, but with respect. He had faced the storm and stood tall, for them, for everyone. Mei was no longer just an ally. She now led new groups of students, many of them outsiders, who came not for trend, but for something deeper. A sense of belonging, of roots, of resistance. Liang, meanwhile, chose to leave the village. He said his time was done, that Zhang's spirit could finally rest. Before departing, he placed a book in Kai's hands, not a combat manual, but a diary filled with forgotten temple stories. "Teach the truth, not just the strikes," he told him. "The world needs memory, not just strength." Han, still recovering, remained under the community's care. His fits of rage had faded into long silences. Slowly, pieces of memory returned, and with them, perhaps, forgiveness. Kai knew peace was fragile. The Brotherhood might not be entirely gone, but in that moment, it didn't matter. The real enemy had been defeated. Silence. The village had told the world it existed, that it resisted, that it fought not with weapons, but with purpose. And Kai was no longer only the guardian of the White Temple, he was the guardian of all who dared to remember. At the entrance of Lin's Row, a new sign was hung, written in 3 languages. "Here we do not forget. Here we fight. Here we live." And standing before that symbol, Kai closed his eyes for a moment. He breathed deeply and smiled. Months later, an anonymous video began circulating in the darkest corners of the internet. It showed a lone silhouette moving through a forest, practicing a long-forgotten style of combat. In the background, a voice spoke in Mandarin. "The Guardian is alive, but who's next?" On a quiet rooftop in Lin's Row, Kai watched the footage with sharp eyes. He knew exactly what it meant. The war wasn't over. It had only changed shape, and he would be ready. If this story gripped you from start to finish, share it with someone who also needs to be reminded that true strength is born from silence, from pain, and from the choice to keep going. What would you have done in Kai's place? Would you fight, run, or choose another path? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want a continuation, leave A in the comments. The resistance has only just begun.